Welcome to Session 4, Unit 4. Session 4, Managing Conflicts of Interest in the Public Service. At the end of this session, you should be able to understand guidelines for managing conflicts of interest in the public service, know how to manage conflicts of interest, understand core principles of managing conflicts of interest. A conflict of interest involves a conflict between public duty and private interest of a public official, in which the public official has private capacity interests, which could improperly influence the performance of their official duties and responsibilities. So here, your public duty is your responsibility to the organization. Your private capacity interests are things or characteristics that benefits you, the individual who is the public officer. So if you make decisions that could improperly influence your performance in delivering your duties and responsibilities, as opposed to the general responsibilities that you owe to the organization, then conflicts of interest has occurred. Managing conflicts of interest. What is conflicts of interest? So this is where an employee's judgment in dealing in the organization, his actions, his judgment is being compromised by his personal interests such as friendship, financial needs, family, or other social factors that has the effect or ability to influence his judgment is what we call a conflict of interest. So when you act in your own personal interest as opposed to something that the organization can benefit from, then there's a conflict of interest. Mostly, this conflict of interest happens when you are in contract with someone. So your contractual terms, you are supposed to work at the benefit of your principal, whoever has contracted you. So here in the organization setting, the organization has contracted you to act on its behalf. However, if you act in your interest and not in the interest of the organization, then there is conflict of interest. A modern conflict of interest policy should strike a balance by identifying risks to the integrity of public organizations and officials. It's important for the policy to strike a balance of risks that could happen. Examples of conflicts of interest that could happen in the employee delivering the duties of the organization. Prohibit unacceptable forms of conflict. Whatever forms that there is, the policy should prohibit it, irrespective of whose interest is it, as far as it's not for the interest of both parties of the employment contract. Make public organizations and individual officials aware of the incidence of such conflicts. Should there be such an event where a conflict of interest has occurred, it should be made known to the organization so that further hindrances should not happen. Ensure effective procedures are deployed for the identification, disclosure, management, and means for appropriate resolution of such conflicts of interest. It's important that if such events should happen, there should be procedures on how they should be resolved in the organization. Now let's look at core principles for managing conflicts of interest. Serving the public interest. It is important for you to serve the public interest and not your private interest. In a situation where you are even considering your private interest at the expense of the public interest, conflicts of interest has started. Supporting transparency and scrutiny. It is important the organization supports a transparent system and scrutinizes the performance of employees, scrutinizes what they do so that you can easily detect it and avoid any further conflicts of interest in the organization. Promoting individual responsibility and personnel example. When someone has done something that didn't comprehend with conflicts of interest, the person should be rewarded. And when someone does something that is of conflict of interest, it should serve as a personal example. How you treat that person, how you work forward, you go forward with reprimanding the person is important because it could serve as an example to deter further conflicts of interest from other employees. Engendering an organizational culture which is intolerant of conflicts of interest. So it's important that you set up a culture with values which is intolerant of conflicts of interest in the organization. We have come to the end of the session. We've learned the meaning of conflicts of interest and how to manage such situations when it happens in the organization. See you in the next session.